for your salts, you treat it like, on our recommendations anyway, the volume of beer that you intend to produce, and you mix those dry.
The beer rep chats with.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beer Rep Chats With, and part 3 of our Fab Four Series. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Iain Kenny from Murphy & Son. Iain, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for asking me.
It's great to have you on. For anyone who's new to Murphy & Sons, what does the company do and how do you support brewers day to day?
As a general rule, Murphy's does most of the process aids and ingredients and things that brewers need to make beer that won't necessarily appear on the label. So we've been going since we have been going since 1887, and we started out actually in Leeds. So our founder, AJ Murphy, if you have a look back at his historical sort of brewing science records, he'll be found writing papers with the Tetley family and things like that.
Awesome.
He then went round and discovered the chemistry of the water in Burton-on-Trent, and then adapted that and took it round all the breweries in the country, and basically teaching them how to make their water profile match Burton-on-Trent and extending it there. So we've had been doing that kind of work with customers like Timothy Taylors and Fullers and these kind of guys for sort of over 100 years, really. So we've got quite historical sort of archives. And then when you move on from there, we moved to Nottingham in the early 1900s. So what we do from there is finance agents, liquor treatments, enzymes, carrageenan for kettle fining, that kind of stuff. And now we probably in the UK we supply about 90% plus breweries, and we also supply. We've got offices in the US and Europe, and then we supply all around the globe really. And I'm currently sat in a booth in our Nottingham University offices. So we support brewers through technical support and lab services as well. So that's the team that I head up. And this year we moved inside the Brewing Science Centre at Nottingham University. So
lovely.
That's where I'm talking to you from.
So, obviously beer styles have evolved a lot over the past decade or so, especially with the big craft hazy beers that are quite frequent now. That every single brewery seems to be brewing a hazy pale. How has the company evolved in the way they adapt to water profiles for these modern beer styles?
In general, we sort of our whole product portfolio doesn't change. The sort of where it moves and what dominates sort of goes through. So we've obviously lived through it from cask beer, then going into keg beer in the 70s and 80s, then back to cask beer, and then now moving into sort of keg and can beer as well. We sort of follow it, and we have sort of strange product mix. I mean, who can remember Brut IPAs now? But the product...
It's not me.
The products that we had for Brut IPAs and things, those are the kind of sort of quick trends and then more lasting trends that we sort of notice.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Let's quickly touch on, why water treatment is so important. So obviously there's a lot of home brewers out there that probably be listening to this episode and maybe a bit scared of water and treating their water and getting it right. I mean, there's a lot of calculators out there, etc. But why is water treatment so important to certain beer styles?
Obviously, dependent on ingredients and strength and everything, it's a good thing to remember that your beer is probably 90 to 95% water in the first place. So
yes.
You need to make sure that that's right. And then we get issues. Obviously, you've got to make sure that it's safe and there's no taints coming through or anything like that that's going to affect your beer in the first place. So that's the sort of basis of your water treatment. It also, you've got to really consider where it's coming from. Is it mains? Is it a well? Is it borehole? These kind of things as you're moving through. So yeah, basically you really have to have a good feel for what your water is doing, trying to make it as consistent as possible, building in that flexibility into your recipes. It's one of those things in general. People don't realise that there's a problem with the water treatment until they've got a problem, and it takes them ages to diagnose, and they follow it right up this chain going into water treatment as a whole. So it comes right from making sure that it's safe to use, right from free of tapes, and then you can start and look at the constituents that you want for brewing. And basically that actually touches on absolutely everything. So if your liquor treatment's not right, you're going to have issues with sugars, converting starches. Your mash might set, for example, and then you're just left with a horrible porridgey mix. It will affect all your fermentation. You'll not get the correct usage of your hops, so you'll be wasting money that way. It really does permeate right through the whole process from raw materials coming into the drink. It is so important.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, when people are not treating their water, and say if you, for instance, I live in London where we've got hard water. If you're trying to make a hazy, juicy pale, you're going to start getting some off flavors because your water profile isn't suited for that sort of beer style. And if you haven't got a great understanding of water treatment and you're thinking it's part of your recipe, like your malt or your, the hops that are going in, or your fermentation, you might think it's something to do with that, when it really could come down to just literally your water profile.
Yeah, that's the thing we get. We get calls saying, "Oh, your findings agents aren't working, or this isn't working," and then we start asking questions of brewers about what's in their water, and they don't really understand why we're asking that. But if your pH is off, or you've not got enough calcium there to help your yeast flocculation, it's going to cause you problems right the way through.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys offer, people can send off their water samples from their mains to get you to test it, and then you guys send it back to them with what additions they should be adding or to their water profile, or what they should be looking to take away. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it can be ordered through Malt Miller, and there's information on our websites to do it direct. Malt Miller is the best service to do it through, I would say.
Yeah, I got mine from the Malt Miller.
Yeah. So in terms of for homebrewers, and we can measure all the relevant ions in the water, and then we can sort of test, and then we give recommendations for 2 or 3 profiles on our website as well. There's open to everybody, free of charge. There's a book that I wrote with my colleague Selena, bit of a lockdown project about beer styles and liquor treatments for that. It's called The Little Book of Liquor. So if you Google Murphy and Son Little Book of Liquor, there's a PDF there of the book that'll help as well.
Awesome. I'll check that out. Definitely. I recommend that one. What kind of problems do you see quite frequently from brewers that are treating their water? What's the main thing that you're kind of seeing them getting wrong when it comes to building their water profiles?
Well, hopefully something that will move on to start and bust the myths. First of all, I confess I'm a terrible chemist. There's a reason why in the office that I work, I'm sat next to 3 PhD chemists. So they're the people that I need. But I think people get scared of it. And there's just sort of really, really, really simple rules that you can follow. It really does only matter about calcium, alkalinity, chloride and sulphate. So it's really important to think about that. So again, there's information in the Little Book of Liquor we just said about on the website, where people can look and say, if you add this many grams of this water treatment, it'll move your profile by that. So first of all, brewers just getting scared of it and seeing chemistry in parts per million, and no. That's the first problem that we see. Probably more on a industrial scale. We see problems with like accumulation of water treatment because they're not emptying the hot liquor tanks every time. So when they're not doing that, and then they keep topping it up with acid over time, they're moving the profile of the water. I would say brewers get too caught up on the actual pH of their water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the bicarb or alkalinity that matters the most. So don't get caught up on the actual pH of the water. And then the other sort of one that we see is obviously pH control throughout the process is important. We get quite a few calls sometimes with people asking about or saying the pH isn't right, and you say, all right, okay, what pH meter are you using? Has it been calibrated? Has it got temperature compensation? These kind of things. So it's a decent quality pH meter to measure right through your process. So to get about it in water, but as you're doing your mash and your wort boiling and things like that, you should be checking your pH to make sure that's consistent.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, you can adjust your pH through using some chemicals. What would you say is best, lactic or phosphoric acid?
It depends. Is this for adjusting your pH sort of post
at your mash?
At the mash.
Yeah.
I would say you've got to be very careful. So phosphoric acid, obviously that won't add any flavour ions, but it can precipitate out calcium. So you have to be careful about that. And lactic acid, depending on how much you have to add to adjust pH with your water, you need, to adjust the alkalinity, you have to be careful that you don't add too much, because that you can get flavour through if it's far too much. But the other thing is, as opposed to the other acids, it's not linear. So if it'll go linear to a point, and then when you add too much, it sort of saturates it, and then its effects on sort of that. I would say get treating the water, and you should hit your target pH.
We touched a little bit about it, but how does water composition influence the way different beer styles taste? So obviously you got Burton, their water's perfect for pales, and London more for stouts and porters because of the hard water. So yeah, so how does that influence the way them styles taste?
I get a bit sort of geeky on this kind of stuff because I like the way I like the way the sort of science, the climate, the water constituents, the people that are drinking the beer, how they've developed these beer styles. I think it's amazing. So like a Burton IPA. So obviously the water permeates through quite a big gypsum seam as it runs into, historically anyway, into Burton. So that picks up the sort of high sulphate content, and that's good for bitter beers, almost a little bit of dryness going on in there. So you've got that water there, and then so Burton starts to kick off as a brewing sort of centre, and then the Empire kicks off. So because the Empire's kicking off, they want beer to send to India. So they start to make strong beers with heavily hop content, so it can survive the journey, give it microbial protection as it's going there, and then they're going to drink it in hot place, so they want it to be pale. Things like that I just love. So that's the water composition coming through, and then fitting how things develop from there. So I'm from Sheffield, so sort of a lot of heavy industry goes on there. So you've got water, which is sort of Pennine water, so it's reasonably innocuous. There's not a great deal in that. But some brewers were topping up sort of salts into their water to add extra electrolytes for their population at one point. They didn't have enough water to drink, so they made the beers sort of relatively low gravity, sort of 3.84% bitters. And that's how the beers evolved around there to support the industrial population. All of that, underpinning all of that, is the water composition right the way through the piece. So in essence, it still comes down to the chloride, your sulphate, your calcium, and your alkalinity, and that permeates right through from there. And yeah, that's where I get really geeky.
We'll touch on the chloride sulphate balance a bit later on, because that's definitely something I want to learn more about, because there's obviously, different chloride to sulphate ratios for what you want from your beer style. For people who are thinking about getting into home brewing and a bit worried about, oh my God, if I'm building up a water profile, what salts do I need to use? Can you explain exactly what are brewing salts in water treatment?
Brewing salts is two ways. Some people use the word brewing salt, so it's looking at the ionic content of your water. When you're treating water, you generally tend to do it in two phases. So the first phase is the acid treatment into your water. So that is to control alkalinity bicarbonate content. So that is generally made straight to the water. And then the salts that you add are, you add those dry with your grist and mixing those in. And that's what starts to affect and add your constituents to it. But again, I'm not a chemist thing. It is generally reasonably straightforward. So some things use sort of technical things. So gypsum, that's the most sort of common salt used in water treatment in general. But that's calcium sulphate. So the clue's in the name what you're going to add there. So it's calcium sulphate. So flake, what people say, calcium chloride. So the structure of calcium chloride means that it forms a flake. It's not a powder. And then Epsom salts are used. That's magnesium sulfate. So no surprises what that ions that's going to add to your brew. Table salt, sodium chloride, calcium chloride. They all add exactly what they say on the tin, really. So the important thing for brewers to know when they're making these additions of the acids, so you might add, say, sulfuric acid, you're adding sulfate and you're reducing your alkalinity. Hydrochloric acid, you're adding chloride, reducing alkalinity. AMS is a mixture of them both. The important bit that you need to know is this much per litre adds this many ppm. So once you've got that, you can start and play tunes and really start to build on. That's exactly the basis for most of the calculators that people use at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's all dependent on how much to put in due to how much your batch of beer is going to be, say 23 litres or something like that. And you got brewing calculators on Brewfather, which will help you go for how much you need to put in your strike water and how much you need to add in your sparge. So would you add it directly to the water, or would you add it to the grist?
For acids, in general, you should treat the volume of water that you're going to use for the whole brew. So that will include your strike liquor and your sparge. And then for your salts, you treat it like, on our recommendations anyway, the volume of beer that you intend to produce, and you mix those dry in with the grist. And then as it mixes in, that should work well. The one thing to remember is gypsum is quite insoluble anyway, so you'll not be able to get that in solution in your water. So,
okay, awesome. So let's. I think we touched on a bit of the salts. How much bicarbonate? When is it helpful, and when is it a problem?
Well, the main thing with bicarb is to keep it in the range for what you're doing. So when we're doing, the one thing to remember when you're adding, if you're looking to add things like bicarbonate salt, is to remember that dark grains are naturally acidic. So they're going to reduce the pH of your mash sort of naturally. So that sometimes you may need to add bicarb to fill that up. the bicarb or residual alkalinity is the major factor in controlling the pH along with calcium through the brewing process. So it's a really good idea to get an idea of how much is in your water to start with. So you can look to either acid treat to reduce it down and keep your pH within spec.
Awesome. So let's touch on the magic ratio between chloride and sulphate, and if we could talk about certain different styles and what sort of balance you would need, what sort of ratio you'd need for them sort of styles. Say, for instance, like IPAs to stouts to maybe even Belgium style beers.
Yeah. So the sort of building blocks that you've got, you always need a bare minimum level of calcium. And you always need your alkalinity depending on the coloured grains and things that you're going to add. And then your flavour starts to come from chloride and sulphate. They're the ones that are going to affect flavour a fair bit. So if you imagine chloride is sort of adds sweetness, subtle sweetness and body to beers. And then sulphate is dryness and bitterness to beers. And there's a really strange interaction that those two do. So it doesn't matter how many of either you've got, if they match, they're basically going to cancel each other out.
Yeah. That's kind of like a balanced profile, that would be.
Yeah. So if you match those two up, it's going to be a balanced profile. So if I was going to do a sort of really good crisp lager, I would look to keep those two as low as possible and then match them up. Make sure you've got enough calcium, so you'd be looking at sort of 80 ppm calcium, keep your alkalinity within spec. So that's where I would use a lactic acid is perfect for a lager because you're not adding any of that chloride or sulfate ions with the process. If you look then to move towards a sort of traditional Burtonisation profile, that is in general has a 2-to-1 sulfate to chloride ratio. And then moving from there, if you were looking at a sort of more traditional sort of neater hazy IPA, you would switch it the other way.
Yeah.
So it's just
chloride to sulfate.
Yeah. And that's where if I was sort of starting out brewing and starting to do liquor treatment for the first time, I would probably start with a simple acid like probably an AMS, which is sulfuric and hydrochloric blend. And then I would use gypsum and calcium chloride and get used to doing that. And then you can look at switching the ratios of those two to start and bring in that profile and get a feel for it then, and then bring other constituents in.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's talk about lager profiles in treatment. I mean, I think the most famous one is probably the Pilsner water.
Yeah.
In Pilsen from Czech Republic. A lot of people imitate that profile. I mean, how important is that profile for brewing them sort of styles of beers?
I think this is a great example where liquor treatment is, you know, that they used to say marginal gains when they were doing the cycling and all this sort of thing. Liquor treatment is the thing that can really elevate and change your lagers to be sort of world class. So that's where, like I say, you really want to try and keep down any ionic content in there. You obviously need a bare minimum amount of calcium. So I think on ours, we try and hit between about 80 and 120 ppm calcium. And then you want to try and cancel out those chloride and sulfates to let the rest of the beer sort of sing and keep them as low as possible. So that's why I would look to use phosphoric or lactic acid in the treatment as my water to bring the alkalinity down without adding any sort of flavour ions or loading it up with anything.
Yeah, because you want that to be crisp. You want your lager to be crisp and not impart other flavours through adding in extra salts, like you said.
Yeah, because to me, like I say, I wouldn't look to pull in too many salts at all to me, a lager, I love that bit where you think it's going to be the greatest thing ever, and then it just drops away. And I think that's the brilliance of great lager. So, if it was me doing that, I'd keep the calcium to what you need for your brew, and then really not look to add too many. Keep it really simple.
Yeah. Is there any beer styles where, where water can kind of make or break the final products? I mean, we just spoke about lager, which is probably the best example, but is there any other beer styles that are very similar?
I think a hazy IPA is another one that can sort of really shine. Ironically, it's not too dissimilar to like a mild profile, because you're looking for that full body and sweetness. So you're switching your ratio because you want a higher chloride to sulphate. And again, you wouldn't go for, if you want to keep your beer hazy, calcium helps yeast flocculate and will also help precipitate out proteins. So you don't want to pull in too much calcium as well. So you try and keep that to a bare minimum there. So that makes a big difference. And then if you want to go really crazy, you got things like gozas and things like that. So sort of really salty, sour sort of flavors.
That's where your pH is really dropped.
Depending
on how sour you want it.
Yeah, and you want that sort of salt content in there to sort of really elevate it and pull it in. So so monitoring your sodium and things like that for that. But yeah, I think things like milds and stouts and manipulating the water treatment for that to give that fullness, so you can play games with stouts if you want to try and dry it out a little bit. These are the kind of things you can really sort of get to.
Awesome. Can you explain a bit what Burtonisation means, and are there any kind of common misconceptions or other classic water treatments?
So Burtonisation is basically treating your water to get that ratio of 2:1, so 2 parts sulphate, 1 part chloride. Murphy's has been built on the back of this. So I'm knocking it from hundreds of years. We do sort of pre-mixed things to help do Burtonisation. So we do DWB and AMS. I think the biggest misconception of Burtonisation is a vast proportion of the pale ales in particular, but sort of ale-style beers in general consumed in this country, in America, everywhere, are Burtonised in some way, shape or form. Even those purchased from some brewers in Burton will probably be Burtonised, although I can't confirm that. But it is a thing, that I think it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere in the brewing industry when they're not making a sort of pale lager style beer. I would say you're looking at 80% will probably be Burtonised from that.
Awesome. Is there anything else that Murphy and Son do other than helping brewers with their water treatment? Is there anything else involving like the water or beer styles that you do to help brewers?
We've got a huge product portfolio with different enzymes and things like that. So we might do, for example, ALDC enzymes to be added with dry hop to help keep the acetal down on some of the sort of heavily dry hop beers. These kind of things. What else? We just developed, this is really cool, which I like. We've got a pomegranate extract that we've developed, and that removes heavy metal ions in the brewing process and leaves them in the mash. And what we're finding that does is it starts to help beer towards the end of the shelf life and keep it tasting fresh. So that's particularly relevant for like really hoppy beer styles and things like that. So we're doing some really cool science at the minute. It's great.
And what's that product called?
That's Mash Life, that product.
Mash Life. Yeah. And that it helps to extend the shelf life of heavily hopped beers.
Yeah, so what it does is it precipitates out particularly iron and copper, and it leaves them behind in spent grains. So as it carries forward, those particularly involved in the oxidation reactions in the finished product. So as it goes along, obviously dissolved oxygen is very important, but these metal ions also do oxidization reactions. So by leaving them behind in your mash, they're less likely to happen. So we've done tests with hot beers. There's a lot of customers in America very interested in it at the moment because their beers travel so far across the country. We've also got case studies where we've used it in lager, and it delays that sort of cardboardy sherry sort of note that you get through lagers as you get towards sort of 12 months of shelf life and things like that. So
where can brewers find all these resources and get support from Murphy & Son if they want to improve their water profiles?
Like I say, I would recommend if they Google Murphy & Son Little Book of Liquor, that comes up there. There's, I think it's about 40 pages. There's loads of different water profiles. It explains everything about the different ions in water. So that's all there. On the back of that as well, there's a thing that tells you what each water treatment does and like the numerical values. So calcium chloride will increase your calcium by this many parts per million and chloride by this many parts per million. So you can start to do it on your own way there to make it easier. And then there's lots and lots of different beer styles in there. For home brewers, for the service that they offer and things, and we find it really well working with the malt miller, and they've got their own sort of report which is more tailored to home brewers as well. So I'd recommend going on their malt miller website and ordering through there and checking out the resources that we've got on the website to help with water treatment.
All the links will be available on the descriptions. And I've used Malt Miller for getting my water profile from you guys. And we'll definitely put a link to your book, the free one, available at Murphy's & Sons. I might even get it myself. You can never learn too much when it comes to home brewing. I mean, when you're coming to building up your water profile, how much knowledge, how scientific knowledge do you need to know to be able to build up a decent water profile? I mean, people looking at these numbers and hearing things like ppm and all the different technical terms, it can feel probably quite daunting to like, oh gosh, do I need a science degree to learn this? I mean, how easy is it?
Relatively speaking, it's very straightforward. Now, just remember the sort of key ones. So I know it sounds like I'm banging on with a broken record, but your bicarbonate, your alkalinity, the same thing. And then your calcium and your chloride-to-sulphate ratios. Everything else can come later, and you can start and think about, sodium and things like that. But yeah, we literally stick to that rule, and it gets us a long way in our things. There's more complicated things out there if you want to look for it and keep digging. And always remember as well, that's a good tip, always remember that you need to increase your alkalinity if you're doing a stout or something with a lot of roasted and dark grains as well. That's something to consider.
Because that lowers your pH.
Yeah. And once you start going, a decent pH meter, keep records. That's the great thing about homebrewing, because you can just keep trying, trial and error, and you really can. If your pH is too high, you can just, if you've got a bit of acid next to you, you can get in there, throw that in, pull that down. It's the same as well. It's after you've cast or whatever and you're getting ready to ferment, you can adjust the pH there, you can adjust the pH all the way using different acids. So yeah, just get stuck in and give it a go.
Yeah. Any recommendations for some good low budget pH readers out there?
Not really. I would just say, always remember one that needs calibrating reasonably frequently. Always keep it clean, and if you can, have a look for one that's temperature compensated. So
so when I adjust for the temperature of say, for instance, your work when you're doing your mash.
And you've got everything really, really well with your liquor treatment. If your pH drops by about 0.1 to 0.2 across your boil. So if you check your pH at the start of boil, check it at the end. If you've got that kind of pH drop, everything's pretty much right in the world.
It's a good tip for you. I never knew that, so I'll be checking that. I always check my pH during 10 minutes into the mash, and then also obviously at the end of the boil, just before your transfer into fermenter. So I'll give that a go.
And the other tip as well that I must say is you can get little alkalinity test kits, which is like a tablet that you drop in and they change colour.
Okay.
So it gives you a rough idea of your alkalinity. Whereas I wouldn't calculate my additions that way. What that does is it lets you know if your water profile has changed, so your incoming water's changed. So we've got quite a few professional brewers using those, because what's happening with climate change and flooding and droughts, the incoming water is a lot more prone to changing.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously you don't want to be keep sending off your water profile for testing every month or so. So that's a good little way of saving a bit of money and making sure that your water's exactly how it should be.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Iain, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and learn about everything that you do at Murphy and Son. And I mean, water profile can sound daunting to most people, but it really isn't. It's a good practice to get on board with, and it will definitely improve your beers by a vast amount if you know your water treatment. So I'll guarantee you that. every brewer that I've spoken to on the show, they always say get your water profile right and get your a base recipe done, and you're basically half the way there, if not more. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. And until we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. And until then, we'll see you later. Cheers, Iain.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you.